Welcome to Daily Dharma Listening, a sacred space for reflection, remembrance, and returning home to the truth within. As you begin this journey with us, let your breath slow. Let your shoulders drop. Let the noise of the world fall away, even if just for a few minutes. In this quiet space, we don't run from life, we sit with it. We meet it. We listen. The first step on the path is not movement, but stillness. There is an old saying in Buddhist teachings, the mind, like water, reflects clearly only when still. In a world of constant motion, notifications, expectations, information flowing like an endless river, it is radical to sit still. But it is in that stillness that the door to transformation opens. Think about the last time you felt overwhelmed. Perhaps it was something small, a missed deadline, a harsh word, a traffic jam. Or maybe it was something vast, grief that arrived without warning, anxiety that lingered for days, the sense of being lost without a map. In those moments, our minds grasped for control, and our hearts beat like frightened birds. The chaos is outside, yes, but also inside. How do we find peace in chaos? Ancient Buddhism does not promise a life without storms. Instead, it offers a lantern to carry through the dark. It offers Buddhist wisdom not as an escape from life, but as a way to fully enter it, with clarity, compassion, and courage. The Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree, not to escape suffering, but to understand it. To see its roots. To look into the fire and find the ember that causes the burn. He taught that suffering comes from attachment, from clinging to what we want, resisting what we don't, and fearing what might be. And so, the path forward is not to resist the storm, but to become still enough that we are no longer tossed by its winds. This is the beginning of learning how to live without fear. In the beginning, Buddhism for beginners might seem filled with unfamiliar terms, dharma, samsara, mindfulness, emptiness. But at its heart, the practice is simple. It is a practice of attention, of presence, of remembering who we are beneath the noise. The next time you feel anxious, pause. Close your eyes. Breathe. Let the moment be as it is. You are not your thoughts. You are not your worry. You are not the story your mind is spinning. You are the awareness watching it all unfold. In that awareness, there is peace. This is the essence of Buddhist lessons for anxiety. Not to fight the anxiety, but to meet it with gentle observation. To sit beside it like an old friend who is suffering. To ask, without judgment, what do you need from me? Often, what anxiety needs is not a solution, but space. Room to breathe. In the practice of protecting your inner space, you begin to protect your energy. Not by building walls, but by cultivating boundaries that are rooted in wisdom. The world will always be loud. But you get to choose what enters your sacred space. You get to choose what thoughts you believe, what emotions you feed, what stories you let define you. There is a Zen saying, let go or be dragged. Holding on to anger, fear, or resentment is like carrying hot coal in your hand, hoping to throw it at someone, but you are the one who burns. So we learn, slowly, to let go. Not because the other person deserves peace, but because we do. This is not weakness. This is power. This is how you transform your mind. In our world today, people often chase happiness in things, titles, relationships, success. But ancient Buddhist teachings remind us, happiness is not something to chase. It is something to return to. It is already here, like the blue sky that remains even behind the darkest storm clouds. You don't have to create peace. You simply have to remember it. And yet, remembering is hard. Especially when we feel lost. When life doesn't look the way we hoped. In those moments, let this be a Buddhist reminder: when you feel lost, there is no wrong path. Even wandering is part of the journey. The forest is not a punishment, it is a teacher. Every step you take, even in confusion, leads you closer to clarity, if you are willing to see. So, how do we stay calm and positive in difficult times? We practice. We sit. We breathe. We return. Again and again. We wash the dishes with presence. We walk with awareness. We speak with intention. Each moment becomes a chance to start again. You don't need to wait for a retreat or a mountaintop. Your life, exactly as it is the perfect place for awakening. When you feel overwhelmed by the suffering of the world, don't harden your heart. That is not protection, it is disconnection. Instead, soften. Let your compassion widen, not shrink. Let your sorrow deepen your presence, not dim your light. This is how to love in a broken world. This is how to stay human in the face of pain. We live in an age that glorifies productivity, urgency, and achievement. But the Dharma whispers, slow down. Sit. Listen. The deeper truths do not shout, they emerge in silence. When you stop chasing, you begin receiving. When you stop speaking, you begin hearing. When you stop resisting, you begin flowing. And flowing is not weakness. It is wisdom. Like the river that carves mountains, like the wind that smooths stone, you too can shape the world not through force, but through presence. Through stillness. Through remembering who you are beneath it all. You are not broken. You are not too late. You are not too much. You are not alone. You are the stillness within the storm. So welcome to this journey. Welcome to this breath. Welcome home. If this touched something in you, if it reminded you of the truth you already carry, consider subscribing to Daily Dharma Listening. Like, share, or save this video so you can return to it when the world feels heavy. There is more to come. More ancient wisdom. More stories. More gentle reminders that your peace is not gone, it is only waiting to be remembered. Now breathe. And begin again. Part 2. How to stay calm and positive in the middle of everything. In the deep thicket of existence, where the winds of change howl without rest and the mind trembles beneath the weight of uncertainty, there lies a secret path not marked by stone or scripture but by stillness. It is the path of calmness, not the absence of turmoil, but the presence of unwavering clarity amidst the chaos. The old masters knew this well. To be truly calm is not to escape the storm, but to rest untouched within it, to see the storm as a teacher rather than an enemy. In the heart of Buddhist teachings lies this simple, radiant truth: what disturbs the mind is not the world, but the way the mind meets the world. So much of our suffering begins with the stories we tell ourselves. The mind, unchecked, becomes a relentless narrator, spinning tales of worry, judgment, and fear. It whispers that we are not enough, that something terrible is about to happen, that the world must bend to our expectations or we will break. But Buddhist wisdom invites us to step back from this narration, to observe it without belief, to rest in the awareness that watches even the most turbulent thought without becoming it. When you learn to sit with your mind rather than obey it, you begin to see through the illusion. The fear, the anger, the grief, they rise like waves, but they are not you. They are movements within the sea of being, not the sea itself. In this realization, you begin to understand how to stay calm and positive, not by pretending the waves do not exist, but by knowing you are the ocean. A monk once said, "Let your mind be like the great sky. Clouds may gather, storms may come, but the sky remains untouched." This is not just poetic comfort. It is the core of practice. Meditation is not about escaping thoughts. It is about seeing them for what they are, impermanent, insubstantial, and ultimately not self. This understanding doesn't numb you to life, it awakens you to it. It makes joy deeper, sorrow more sacred, and love more courageous. Because you no longer cling, you can finally see. When we begin to practice mindfulness, especially in the early stages of Buddhism for beginners, we often confront restlessness. The body fidgets. The thoughts multiply. The breath feels trapped. But in time, we realize this discomfort is not a barrier to peace, it is the doorway. We are not practicing to become calm. We are practicing to see what stands in the way of our calmness. And often, what stands in the way is resistance itself. We resist pain. We resist uncertainty. We resist boredom. But what if peace lies on the other side of surrender? Not surrender as defeat, but surrender as trust, a deep inner agreement with reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. In this surrender, we find something profound. The present moment is always bearable. It is only when we argue with it, through memory, judgment, or projection, that it becomes unbearable. To protect your energy is to protect your awareness from being hijacked by what is unwholesome. It is not avoidance, but discernment. The Buddha taught that wise association is one of the greatest supports on the path. Just as a tree leans toward the light, our minds lean toward the company we keep. Protecting your energy means surrounding yourself, internally and externally, with that which nourishes clarity, not confusion. Even in solitude, we are not alone. Our thoughts, memories, and emotions are constant companions. So ask yourself, are these inner companions kind? Are they truthful? Are they necessary? If not, let them go. You do not need to entertain every guest that knocks on the door of your mind. You may greet them with compassion, and still not invite them to stay. And yet, there will be days when you feel lost. The path will disappear beneath your feet. The teachings will feel distant. The breath will feel like stone. In those moments, remember this Buddhist reminder: when you feel lost, even the Buddha once wandered. Even the masters we revere sat in darkness. Enlightenment is not a straight line. It is a spiral. A river. A song. Sometimes soft. Sometimes roaring. Always moving. Even stillness moves. What does it mean to transform your mind? It is not about replacing bad thoughts with good ones. It is about seeing all thoughts as passing clouds, and returning to the vast sky of awareness beneath them. The mind transformed is not the mind made perfect. It is the mind seeing clearly. In that clarity, compassion arises naturally. For how can you judge others when you see how wildly the winds blow through your own house? Buddhist lessons for anxiety do not ask us to suppress or conquer anxiety. They invite us to turn toward it with curious attention. To sit with it like a small child having a nightmare. To offer it presence rather than punishment. When you do this, you begin to notice, the anxiety is not the problem. Your resistance to it is. And the moment you stop resisting, the anxiety shifts. It softens. It teaches. To find peace in chaos is to stop making peace a condition for your happiness. Peace is not what happens when everything is quiet. Peace is what you bring to everything, even the noise, even the heartbreak, even the unknown. You live in a world that profits from your panic, that sells solutions to problems it created, that keeps you chasing the next moment so you never meet this one. But Buddhism teaches the opposite. It teaches that nothing is missing, that this breath, this step, this tear, this smile, are all enough. When you realize this, you begin to live without fear. Not because fear is gone, but because you no longer fear fear. You learn to walk with it, to bow to it, to see it as a messenger rather than a monster. And in doing so, you reclaim your life. The practice is not always easy, but it is always available. In traffic, in grief, in joy, in silence. Each moment, each breath, is an invitation to return, to remember, to listen. And so we listen, not just with ears, but with hearts. We listen to the wind through the leaves, to the rise and fall of our chest, to the still, small voice that says, "You are enough. You are already whole. You do not need to be more, do more, fix more, become more. You only need to wake up, to see clearly, to love what you see." The path is not somewhere else. It is right here, under your feet, inside your breath, beneath your story. And the question is not, will the storm end? The question is, can you be still within it? That is where the real transformation begins. Part 3. Live without fear. To live without fear is not to be untouched by pain, nor is it to be invincible to the tremblings of the world. It is to walk the path with open eyes and a still heart, even as the unknown stretches infinitely ahead. Fear, in its many forms, shadows the human experience. It clings to our breath in the quiet of night, weaves into our choices, stiffens our steps, closes our hearts. But the Buddhist path does not ask us to deny fear, nor does it demand we destroy it. It teaches us to look directly at fear, to sit beside it as one sits with a fragile guest, to listen, to understand, and to ultimately see that fear, like all things, is impermanent. At the root of Buddhist teachings lies the wisdom that all phenomena arise and cease according to conditions. Fear is no exception. It arises from the seeds we water, uncertainty, attachment, ignorance, and the illusion of control. When the conditions are understood, when the roots are seen clearly, fear loses its grip. To live without fear is to live with full awareness of the conditions that give rise to it, and to let those conditions dissolve in the sunlight of insight. The Buddha faced fear beneath the Bodhi tree. Not metaphorical fear, but deep existential dread, temptation, doubt, the illusions of self. And yet, he did not flee. He did not fight. He sat. He breathed. He watched. And in that stillness, the fear passed. Not because it was vanquished, but because it was understood. To understand fear is to be free from it. Not by changing the world, but by changing the way we meet the world. In the heart of fear is clinging, the desire to hold what must change, to keep what cannot stay, to control what is not ours to command. But when we learn to release the grasp, when we loosen the knots of craving and resistance, fear has no foothold. To live without fear is to surrender, not in defeat, but in trust. Trust in the law of impermanence. Trust in the unfolding of each breath. Trust in the clarity that arises when we stop struggling. There is a moment in each life when one stands at the threshold of the unknown. A diagnosis, a loss, a great change. And in that threshold, the mind floods with questions. What will happen? Will I survive this? Will I lose everything I love? These are not questions to be dismissed, they are deeply human. But the Dharma turns them inside out. Instead of asking what will happen, it invites us to ask, what is happening now? Instead of fearing what we might lose, it teaches us to see what we are already holding. Instead of running from impermanence, it urges us to bow to it. In that bowing, there is grace. In that acceptance, there is peace. This is not passive. This is the courage of the awakened heart, the heart that beats not in spite of fear, but through it. When the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths, he began with suffering, not as a pessimistic view, but as a compassionate entry into truth. Life contains suffering. Not because the world is cruel, but because the world is changing. And we fear change. We fear the loss of youth, the crumbling of plans, the death of loved ones, the fading of our own breath. But fear only tightens what must be released. It hardens the heart and clouds the mind. To live without fear is not to deny sorrow, but to embrace it with open hands. It is to see that love and loss are not opposites, but twins. That joy is not the absence of pain, but the full embrace of all that life contains. In the teachings, there is a practice called Maranasati, mindfulness of death. Not to frighten us, but to liberate us. When we remember that this breath may be our last, we cherish it. When we see that each moment is borrowed, we stop postponing our awakening. Death is not the enemy. Fear of death is. And when we turn toward that fear, when we hold it in the cradle of attention, it softens. It reveals its secret, that to live without fear is to live fully now. Modern life seduces us with false securities, insurance policies, bank accounts, social status. We build walls and plans and narratives to protect ourselves. But deep down, we know none of it is permanent. We know the body is fragile. We know that change is the only constant. And so fear persists, quietly gnawing beneath the surface. The only true refuge is not in the external world, it is in awakening. The Buddha called this refuge the triple gem, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Not as objects of belief, but as living realities. The Buddha, our capacity to awaken. The Dharma, the truth that liberates. The Sangha, the community of those who walk beside us. When we take refuge in these, we step out of fear, not because we are safe in the worldly sense, but because we are rooted in the unshakable ground of truth. To transform your mind is to transform your relationship with fear. When fear arises, do not push it away. Do not mask it with positivity or drown it in distraction. Invite it in. Sit with it. Ask it what it believes. Fear often believes we are alone. That we are unworthy. That we cannot handle what is coming. These beliefs are not facts. They are stories. And stories can be rewritten. With presence. With compassion. With understanding. Buddhist lessons for anxiety teach that the breath is a bridge. When fear arises, return to the breath. Not to escape, but to anchor. Feel the air enter and leave the body. Notice the space between each breath. In that space, there is freedom. In that space, you are not your fear, you are the witness, the container, the awareness. And awareness is not afraid. Awareness simply sees. To protect your energy in a fearful world, you must become discerning. Notice what you consume, not just food, but media, conversation, even thought patterns. Are they nourishing peace or feeding fear? Choose silence over noise. Choose kindness over criticism. Choose presence over prediction. Fear thrives in what might be. Peace lives in what is. To live without fear is to keep returning to what is. Even when lost, remember, fear is not failure. It is a call to awaken. A bell in the dark forest reminding you to look again, to listen deeper, to feel more fully. The lotus grows in the mud, not despite it. And your awakening is no different. You do not need to wait until you are fearless to begin. You begin now. Afraid, perhaps. But present. Willing. Soft-hearted. Wide-eyed. There is an ancient stillness beneath the surface of your life. A wellspring of calm that fear cannot touch. It does not need to be built, it only needs to be remembered. Each time you sit with fear without flinching, you draw closer to it. Each time you breathe in the middle of the storm, you return to it. Each time you see clearly and act wisely, you embody it. This is the path. This is the practice. This is the liberation that awaits you, not in some distant future, but here, in this breath, in this moment, in this ordinary miracle of being alive. Live without fear, not because nothing can harm you, but because you have discovered that even in harm, there is truth, and even in loss, there is love, and even in death, there is peace. Part 4. Protect your energy. There is a silence within each of us that the world cannot touch, a clarity not born of thought but of being, a space that is neither disturbed by praise nor diminished by blame. In the depth of that space, there is peace. But to remain in that stillness, to return to it amid the weight of voices, demands the wisdom to protect your energy, not as an act of withdrawal, but as a sacred discipline of presence. Buddha's teachings have long pointed to this inner sanctuary, reminding us that not all who smile offer kindness, not all who speak bring clarity, and not all moments are meant to be entered. To protect your energy is to discern what is worthy of your attention, what is worthy of your breath, what is worthy of your silence. It is not to shield yourself in fear, but to guard the gate of awareness with compassion and clarity. The mind, unguarded, is like an open field where any seed may take root. A single word spoken in anger, a glance colored by envy, a wave of regret passing through the heart, left unchecked, these small disturbances become storms. But when the practitioner is mindful, when the inner gatekeeper is awake, there is a quiet strength that knows when to open, when to close, and when to simply watch without reaction. In the Dhammapada, it is said, not by silence alone does one become a sage, but by guarding truth, wisdom, and restraint. To protect your energy is to live by this restraint, not as repression, but as freedom. Each day the world pulls at the fabric of our attention. Advertisements shout promises of happiness, strangers project their pain through criticism, acquaintances carry chaos like wildfire in conversation. The one who is not grounded will be swept away. The one who has not tended to the roots will find their peace scorched. But the practitioner, anchored in awareness, learns to meet the world with openness and boundary. Not all invitations must be accepted. Not all battles are worth fighting. Not all suffering is yours to carry. In the stillness of right understanding, there is a knowing that says, I can meet you with compassion without joining your confusion. I can love you without losing myself. To walk this path, we must recognize the ways in which we leak energy. Every time we ruminate over the past, we bleed into memory. Every time we worry over the future, we pour ourselves into shadow. Every complaint, every resentment, every unspoken expectation, these are tiny incisions through which the present moment drains away. Protecting your energy is not about clenching the fists around your time or shielding your heart with armor. It is about holding your own presence as sacred. When the mind returns to the breath, when the heart beats in awareness, there is no past to regret, no future to fear, only this breath, this step, this now. In that now, there is power. Buddhism for beginners often emphasizes mindfulness as a starting point, but mindfulness is not simply being aware of what arises. It is knowing what to feed. It is turning toward the wholesome, toward the luminous, toward that which supports liberation. When anger arises, observe it, but do not nourish it. When jealousy flickers, bow to it, but do not entertain it. When fear whispers its familiar song, hear it, but do not dance. This is how we protect our energy, not by escaping the human experience, but by relating to it with wisdom. Protecting your energy also means honoring silence. In a world where noise is constant and opinion is currency, silence becomes radical. Silence is not emptiness. It is full. It is alive. It is where truth dwells. Every sage, every awakened one, has spoken of silence not as absence, but as presence. When we fall into that silence, we remember. We remember that peace is not something we chase. It is something we return to. And in that return, we remember who we are beyond name, beyond role, beyond story. Relationships, too, are mirrors for this energy. There are those who enter our lives like fresh wine through an open window, uplifting, clarifying, gentle. And there are those who arrive as thunder, loud, heavy, disorienting. The Dharma asks us not to judge, but to discern. What opens the heart? What closes it? What supports your path? What distracts you from it? Protecting your energy means walking away from what dims your light without needing to explain why. It is knowing that your peace is not selfish, it is your offering to the world. An agitated mind cannot bring calm. A suffering heart cannot offer refuge. Your stillness is not a luxury. It is a necessity. There is also the matter of internal dialogue. We often imagine the threats to our energy come from outside, but some of the sharpest daggers are our own thoughts. The way we speak to ourselves. The expectations we carry. The shame we hide. The Buddha taught that the greatest enemy is the untrained mind. And so, to protect your energy is also to protect your inner speech. Let it be kind. Let it be wise. Let it be aligned with truth. If a friend spoke to you the way your mind often does, would you remain close to them? Begin to treat your own heart as you would a dear companion on a long journey. Offer it rest. Offer it mercy. Offer it silence. In the practice of protecting energy, boundaries are sacred. But boundaries are not walls. They are doors with wisdom. They say, I will meet you here, but not beyond. They say, I choose clarity over confusion, presence over obligation. Boundaries are not about separation, but about conscious connection. They are the way the awakened one moves through the world without losing themselves in it. Even amidst chaos, it is possible to remain untouched. This is not detachment, it is intimacy without entanglement. The lotus does not refuse the mud, yet it rises unsullied. So too can we meet life in all its messiness without letting it stain our inner silence. That is the heart of Buddhist wisdom, not to become indifferent, but to become invincible in compassion. To see clearly, feel deeply, and yet remain free. And when the world becomes too much, when the heart grows weary, return to the breath. Return to the earth beneath your feet. Return to the body that holds you, the sky that watches silently above. Let nature remind you that all things arise and pass. That even the strongest storm finds its end. That peace, when protected, becomes your home, not a place, but a presence. Not a destination, but a way of walking. To protect your energy is to remember that you are not here to fix the world, but to meet it with presence. You are not here to absorb every sorrow, but to radiate a peace that transforms without effort. You are not here to react to everything, but to respond with wisdom. And sometimes, the wisest response is to rest, to withdraw, to be silent. This is your offering. This is your power. This is the Dharma of stillness. Part 5. Buddhist reminders when you feel lost. There will come a time when the light no longer shows the way, when familiar teachings sound like echoes fading into the void, and the compass of certainty spins without direction. In such a time, the soul trembles and the heart folds inward, asking silently what words can never fully express. Where am I going, and why can't I see the path anymore? To feel lost is not a deviation, it is a sacred part of the journey. The mountains of awakening are not smooth and paved, but mist-covered and winding. Even the awakened ones walked through forests of not knowing. Even the Buddha himself left his palace not with answers, but with questions burning like fire within. Buddhist reminders when you feel lost are not grand revelations, but quiet lanterns, ancient in origin, waiting patiently for the wind to die down so their light can be seen again. The first reminder is this: you are not broken. In confusion, in despair, in stillness, or in panic, your nature remains untouched. The clouds may gather, but the sky is not harmed. This truth is not something you need to become, it is something you need to remember. Beneath the layers of identity and expectation, beneath the weight of fear and doubt, there is a space that has never been lost. The teachings call it many names: suchness, original mind, Buddha nature. But names do not capture its silence. You touch it not by seeking, but by stopping. You come home not by walking, but by pausing. When the path disappears beneath your feet, stop looking for signs. Be still. Listen. Often, the very effort to escape the feeling of being lost is what deepens it. The mind, desperate for answers, creates more noise. But the Dharma whispers, be here. Even if here is sorrow, even if here is doubt. The moment you resist nothing, the moment you say, this too is part of my practice, something shifts. You stop being lost and start being present. And presence is always the way home. The second reminder: impermanence is your ally. Everything changes. The sorrow you feel now is not a life sentence, it is a passing storm. The numbness, the apathy, the spiritual dryness, all of it is weather. What remains unchanged is your awareness, your capacity to see, to feel, to awaken. Even when the heart feels empty, awareness is there, holding the emptiness like a ball. Do not fear the void. It is fertile ground. Seeds germinate in darkness. What seems like loss may be transformation. You may think you've taken a wrong turn, but in the eyes of the Dharma, there are no wrong turns, only the exact turns you needed to take to meet yourself more deeply. A path is still a path, even when it disappears. The teaching is still a teaching, even when it feels silent. The practice is still working, even when it feels broken. Do not measure your progress by how peaceful you feel. Sometimes progress is the growing discomfort with old illusions. Sometimes awakening is not light and joy, but the crumbling of the false self. Another reminder: comparison is a thief. The mind will look around at others, those who seem more enlightened, more devoted, more certain, and judge your place based on theirs. But no two paths are alike. What blooms for one in spring may not bloom for you until winter. The Dharma unfolds according to conditions, and those conditions are as unique as your breath. Do not let the illusion of others' clarity cause you to doubt your own sincerity. The very fact that you are still walking, still questioning, still yearning, that is grace. You do not need to feel inspired to be faithful. You do not need to feel certain to continue practicing. Faith, in the Buddhist sense, is not blind belief. It is the willingness to keep going, even when you don't know where the road leads. It is the heart that bows, not to answers, but to the mystery. It is the courage to sit in silence, to breathe through confusion, to chant even when the words feel hollow, to light incense not to feel better, but to remember that something sacred still lives within the gesture. The practice of living without fear is most alive in moments when fear surrounds you. The practice of finding peace in chaos is not meant for when things are calm, but precisely for the days when your mind is stormy, your heart is heavy, and the way forward is hidden. Buddhist teachings are not decorations for perfect days, they are medicine for broken hours. If you feel lost, remember this too is part of the path. You are not off course. You are in the forest. And the forest teaches its own kind of wisdom. Protect your energy gently in these times. Do not feed the mind that says you've failed, that you've regressed, that you're unworthy. That mind is an echo of old conditioning. Thank it for trying to protect you, and then return to the breath. In the breath is something ancient, something wise. Each inhale, a receiving. Each exhale, a release. Do not underestimate the power of one conscious breath. It is the beginning of everything. Transform your mind not by forcing light into darkness, but by letting the darkness be seen. What you see with awareness transforms naturally. If sadness is here, let it speak. If numbness is here, let it rest. If anger is here, let it burn without harm. Do not rush to fix yourself. You are not a problem. You are a process. A living, unfolding process of becoming and remembering and becoming again. This is how you stay calm and positive in the face of not knowing, not by pretending all is well, but by trusting that even this moment has its place. That even in this lostness, you are being held. By the earth beneath your body. By the breath moving through you. By the teachings that have carried thousands through much darker forests than this. You are not alone. The Sangha of the past, the wisdom of the Dharma, the compassion of all who walk this path, they walk with you even now, unseen but not unfelt. And if you cannot yet see the path, become the path. Let your steps be offerings. Let your stillness be prayer. Let your tears be truth. The awakened ones never promised a life without confusion. They promised a light that does not die even when all lamps are broken. That light is awareness. That light is you. And if these words reach you in your lostness, let them remind you gently, you are allowed to not know. You are allowed to not feel okay. You are allowed to be exactly as you are. And still, you are worthy of love, of peace, of awakening. You are still walking the path, even now. And that is more than enough. If this voice of the Dharma has soothed your heart or helped you remember even a flicker of light in your own forest, consider subscribing to Daily Dharma Listening. May these teachings continue to meet you wherever you are. May they hold you, guide you, and remind you that even when you feel lost, the way is never far. It has always been right here, within your next breath. Part 6. Find peace in chaos. There is a silence deeper than the roar of the world, a calm not dependent on still waters or gentle winds, but one that breathes steadily in the middle of flames, in the echo of grief, in the swirl of uncertainty. This peace does not belong to the world outside. It belongs to the one who sees without clinging and feels without drowning. In Buddhist teachings, peace is not described as an escape from chaos, but as a sacred intimacy with all things, an awakened way of being in the middle of life's ceaseless flux. To find peace in chaos is to stop demanding the world to be calm and to begin training the heart to meet the world as it is. The Buddha never promised a life without storms. He walked in a world of sickness, aging, loss, betrayal, war, and hunger. What made him different was not the absence of suffering, but the way he stood within it, unshaken, clear-eyed, filled with boundless compassion. Peace, to the Buddha, was not a fragile quiet that crumbled at the first sign of trouble. It was a vast, grounded clarity that remained unmoved even when everything else was. And it is this kind of peace that the path offers, not a fleeting mood, but an unshakable refuge. To find peace in chaos begins with the recognition that chaos is not the enemy. Chaos is life unfiltered, raw, and impermanent. It is the changing of seasons, the shifting of tides, the rise and fall of empires, the sudden ending of what we thought was certain. Chaos is the breaking down of illusion. And while the ego trembles in the face of uncertainty, the awakened mind bows to it. The mind that has tasted truth no longer depends on external order. It begins to trust something deeper than outcomes. When the world around you spins, when news of war spreads, when sickness arrives, when relationships fracture, when your plans collapse, the mind instinctively reaches outward, trying to grasp stability. But in Buddhist wisdom, the invitation is to turn inward, not to escape but to remember. The practice is not to fix the chaos but to train the heart not to be shattered by it. The breath becomes your anchor, the present moment your temple, your awareness the only constant. You may not be able to stop the storm, but you can stop becoming the storm. In moments of intensity, the untrained mind tightens. It resists, judges, blames, or shuts down. But the practitioner pauses. Breathing in, they know this is chaos. Breathing out, they release resistance. The moment becomes what it is, not what we want it to be. And in that surrender, the chaos loses its power. Because chaos, like all things, feeds on our reaction. Without clinging, it passes through. Without resistance, it reveals its teaching. To stay calm and positive in the face of chaos does not mean to deny pain or suppress emotion. It means to allow everything to arise without letting anything possess you. It means crying when there are tears, shouting when the fire rises, but all the while knowing, this too is passing. And more importantly, this too is not self. The eye of the storm is not outside, it is the awakened presence within. Chaos reveals attachment. It shows us what we are still clinging to: identity, comfort, control, future, past. When the ground shakes, we see what we've built our house upon. And if it crumbles, perhaps it was never home to begin with. This is not despair. This is liberation. To lose what was never truly yours is to make space for what cannot be taken. Chaos, when met with awareness, becomes purification. It strips away illusion. It burns false refuge to the ground. What remains is truth, naked, unchanging, silent. There are days when the chaos is not global but deeply personal. The mind races. The heart aches. The body trembles. And in such moments, the teaching is simple: return to the breath. Not because the breath will fix the problem, but because the breath is real. It is here. It is now. It brings you back from the past, from the imagined future, from the spirals of thought, back to what is always happening, this inhalation, this exhalation. You breathe, and you remember. You breathe, and you return. You return to the awareness that holds everything without preference. The same awareness that watches joy, watches sorrow. The same space that holds delight, holds despair. In this space, there is peace, not because things are easy, but because nothing needs to be different than it is. You are not a mistake. Your suffering is not a failure. Your confusion is not a flaw. These, too, are visitors. And awareness is the host who remains kind to all who knock. The world you live in today glorifies speed, noise, opinion, achievement. It teaches that peace must be earned, that chaos must be conquered, that stillness is laziness. But the Dharma says otherwise. The Dharma teaches that in stillness, we remember what matters. That in chaos, we awaken to impermanence. That suffering is not a punishment, but a doorway. And peace is not something you get at the end of the journey, it is something you walk with every step of the way. To find peace in chaos is to begin walking slowly through the fire, not because you are immune, but because you are awake. You see the fire, and you know it burns, but you do not panic. You do not flinch. You bow to it. You listen to it. And you let it teach you what only fire can teach, how to let go, how to be light, how to carry only what cannot be consumed. There is a silence in you deeper than every word. There is a calm in you older than every storm. You are not here to be untouched by life, you are here to be transformed by it. And chaos, if met with mindfulness, will not destroy you. It will unveil you. It will peel back the layers until only truth remains. In such moments, let the Buddhist reminders guide you. Do not feed what is unwholesome. Do not rush toward distraction. Do not numb yourself. Sit. Breathe. Feel everything. Let it break open if it must. Then watch. Watch as the stillness rises again, not because the world has calmed, but because you have remembered your place within it. You are not the wave crashing. You are the ocean watching. And in that seeing, there is peace. If these words have helped you remember the stillness within your own storm, subscribe to Daily Dharma Listening. Let the voice of the teachings follow you gently, quietly, through all your days. In times of chaos, may you find the silence that never left. In all seasons, may you walk with peace that does not depend on the world. Part 7. Transform your mind. There comes a point on the path when no more external teachings can substitute for the inner turning, when the scriptures, the chants, the ceremonies, the teachers, all gently fall silent, and the only voice that remains is the one inside, asking quietly but insistently, will you transform your mind, or will you continue living as its prisoner? Buddhist wisdom points not to changing the world, but to changing the way the mind sees the world. For when perception is purified, the world itself is no longer a threat but a mirror, not a battlefield but a reflection, not something to conquer but something to understand. The chaos remains, the impermanence remains, but the suffering, the tightness, the fear, the resistance, begins to loosen. To transform your mind is not to decorate it with positivity or armor it with affirmations, it is to see clearly, to strip away illusion, and to live from a place beyond clinging. The untrained mind is like a river in flood, crashing over its banks, sweeping everything in its path. But the trained mind is like a deep well, silent, still, and full of clarity. The transformation begins the moment one stops believing every thought. Thoughts arise endlessly, judgments, comparisons, fears, desires, but the practitioner learns to watch them with calm detachment. Like clouds moving across the sky, thoughts appear and disappear. They are not the sky. They are not the truth. And the moment you see this, the grip begins to loosen. The Buddha taught that the mind precedes all things. With mind, we create the world. An angry mind creates a hostile world. A fearful mind sees threat in every shadow. A craving mind finds dissatisfaction in every experience. But a mind grounded in awareness, compassion, and equanimity sees the same world and responds with clarity, patience, and joy. Nothing needs to change outside for peace to arise within. This is the radical promise of the Dharma. Freedom is not in controlling the outer conditions, it is in liberating the inner response. To transform your mind is to bring the light of mindfulness into every corner of the psyche, especially the ones you've kept hidden. It is to look honestly at your attachments, your habits, your conditioned patterns, your beliefs about yourself and others. The process is not always comfortable. At times, it feels like loss. The identities you built so carefully begin to dissolve. The stories you've lived in begin to unravel. But what remains is not emptiness. It is spaciousness. It is the formless awareness that does not need to cling to roles or narratives. Transformation does not come through force but through understanding. The practitioner does not suppress thoughts, they observe them. They do not punish desires, they understand their root. They do not fight the ego, they see through its illusion. And in that seeing, a quiet shift occurs. Reaction becomes response. Restlessness becomes stillness. Confusion becomes insight. The mind, no longer the master, becomes the servant of something higher, wisdom, compassion, presence. There is no shortcut. The transformation is not a single moment but 1,000 small choices. Each time you choose awareness over reactivity, kindness over anger, presence over distraction, you are shaping the mind. Like a potter at the wheel, you are forming something beautiful from clay. It takes patience. It takes persistence. It takes love. And sometimes, it takes falling apart to remember what is truly real. Buddhism for beginners often begins with the breath, the body, the present moment. But as the path deepens, the breath becomes more than just air, it becomes a guide. The body becomes more than just flesh, it becomes a teacher. Every sensation, every emotion, every thought becomes a Dharma gate, a place where transformation is possible. When you feel fear, that is your practice. When you feel joy, that is your practice. When you feel lost, that too is your practice. There is no moment that is not part of the path. Transforming the mind also means recognizing what you feed it. The words you speak, the media you consume, the company you keep, the thoughts you entertain, all of these shape the mind. Just as the body becomes what you eat, the mind becomes what you dwell upon. Do you feed the mind with resentment, with fear, with distraction? Or do you nourish it with silence, with truth, with compassion? Protecting your energy is not separate from transforming your mind, it is part of it. You are the gatekeeper. Choose wisely what enters. One of the most powerful tools in transformation is stillness. Not the forced stillness of discipline, but the natural stillness that arises when the mind grows quiet. In stillness, the old wounds surface. The mind tries to run. But if you stay, if you breathe, if you watch, the wound begins to heal, not because you fixed it, but because you allowed it to be seen. The light of awareness is not passive. It is transformative. What is seen clearly loses its power to bind you. And yet, transformation is not about becoming someone new. It is about returning to who you truly are beneath the layers. You do not need to become awakened, you need to remember that you already are. The veils are many: fear, desire, comparison, doubt. But awareness burns through them gently, steadily. There is no need to rush. The seed does not open with force. It opens when the conditions are right. Your task is not to push but to prepare the ground. Practice, return, let go. There will be setbacks. There will be days when the mind feels wild again, when old patterns return with force. But these are not failures. They are part of the deepening. Each return is stronger than the last. Each moment of mindfulness etches a new groove into the mind, replacing habit with freedom. And over time, the transformation becomes evident, not in grand moments, but in quiet ones: the pause before a reaction, the breath in the midst of fear, the smile in the face of uncertainty. This is how you live without fear, not by eliminating fear, but by transforming your relationship to it. This is how you find peace in chaos, not by escaping the world, but by transforming the mind that meets the world. This is how you protect your energy, not by isolation, but by transforming the roots of your suffering. The path is not linear. It is spiral. It circles back again and again, each time offering deeper insight, each time inviting you further in. And in the quiet hours, when the world is asleep and only your thoughts remain, let the mind be still. Let it rest. Let it return to its original nature, open, luminous, free. In that silence, there is no need to seek. You are already home. Transform your mind, not for perfection, but for peace. Transform your mind, not to escape life, but to enter it fully. Transform your mind, and the whole world transforms with it. Part 8: Buddhist Lessons for Anxiety. There are days when the breath shortens without reason, when the heart tightens though nothing has changed, when the mind circles endlessly around fears that have no name. These are the days when anxiety arrives uninvited, not as a storm from outside, but as a subtle trembling within. The world may be quiet, the room still, but inside, 1,000 thoughts move like leaves scattered by an unseen wind. To those who walk this path, who seek to live with open hearts, Buddhist lessons for anxiety do not come as promises to remove discomfort, but as gentle invitations to understand it, to sit beside it, to see through its illusions, and to return again to the place that fear cannot touch. Anxiety is not weakness. It is not a failure of practice. It is the body remembering old wounds. It is the mind searching for control. It is the heart contracting in the face of uncertainty. And the teachings say, let it be. Do not push it away. Do not drown it in distractions. Do not wrap it in shame. Sit with it. Invite it in like a guest who has traveled a long way, tired and confused. Offer it the cushion of mindfulness. Listen. The Buddha understood suffering not as something to eliminate, but as something to see clearly. And anxiety is a form of suffering, a mind caught in projections, spinning stories about what might go wrong, about who we might lose, about how we might fall. The first lesson, then, is presence. The anxious mind is never here. It lives in the future, in imagined outcomes, in shadows that have not yet taken form. So we bring it back, not with force, but with compassion. Breathing in, I know I am breathing in. Breathing out, I know I am breathing out. This is not a mantra to escape anxiety. It is a doorway back to what is real. The breath is always real. The body is always now. When the thoughts become too loud, the breath becomes the refuge. one breath, then another, and another, until the mind softens, until the heart begins to remember the rhythm of trust. Anxiety feeds on resistance. The more we push it away, the louder it becomes. Like a child tugging at your sleeve, it wants attention, not suppression. So give it attention, but not identification. Say, this is anxiety. This is fear. This is tension in the chest, heat in the face, tightness in the throat. When you name it without becoming it, you create space. And in that space, there is freedom. The second lesson is impermanence. No state of mind lasts forever. Emotions rise and fall like waves. Even the most overwhelming panic cannot sustain itself without your participation. The moment you stop fueling it with fearful thoughts, the wave crests and begins to recede. This is the power of observing without feeding. The practitioner learns to wait, not in passive suffering, but in steady awareness. You watch the wave rise. You feel it peak. You let it pass. And afterward, you do not say, I failed. You say, I remained. In the Buddhist view, anxiety is often born from craving certainty, craving safety, craving a future we can predict. But the future is unknowable. The path is always unfolding. And the craving for what cannot be known becomes suffering. The antidote is surrender. Not giving up, but letting go of the illusion that we can control what is beyond us. The practitioner bows to what is, even when it is uncomfortable. They say, this, too, is part of the path. This, too, belongs. And in that inclusion, the fear loses its sharpness. Another lesson is the importance of wise perception. The anxious mind often distorts reality, seeing danger where there is none, interpreting silence as rejection, interpreting change as threat. But perception can be trained. The practice of mindfulness reveals these distortions. You begin to notice the habitual stories. I'm not safe, I'm not enough, something terrible is coming. And you begin to question them. You ask, is this true? Is it absolutely true? What is another way of seeing this? Slowly, the mind begins to loosen its grip on the old narratives. Protecting your energy is essential in anxious states. Anxiety is amplified by noise, by toxic environments, by hurried lives. The practitioner learns to create spaces of refuge, both externally and internally. In the whirlpool of modern existence, where the days bleed into nights and the weight of unspoken worry sits quietly beneath the ribs, many long for an answer not to fix life, but to remain steady through it. Not to silence the noise, but to remember the stillness within it. The question is not how to remove all pain or avoid all discomfort, but how to stay calm and positive while walking straight into the heart of impermanence. In Buddhist teachings, this is not a fleeting mood to be chased, but a quality of mind cultivated through patience, clarity, and a deep remembrance of what truly matters. It is a way of being anchored not in external conditions, but in internal knowing. To stay calm is not to be indifferent. It is to respond with spaciousness rather than react with contraction. It is to meet the winds of life not with fear, but with the grounded rhythm of the breath. Every emotion that arises, anger, fear, restlessness, is an invitation to pause, to listen, to turn inward, and to ask, what is really needed now? Not what will fix this moment, but what will allow me to stay present, intact, open. The practice begins not in ideal circumstances, but in the ordinary challenges that come unannounced, the traffic jam, the cruel word, the disappointment, the ache of the unknown. These are not interruptions to the path. They are the path. The mind, left untrained, is easily disturbed. It wanders into stories, into regrets, into fantasies, into judgments. It clings to what it wants, resists what it fears, and calls that tension normal. But Buddhist wisdom points to another possibility. The mind, when gently trained through mindfulness and compassion, becomes a refuge instead of a battlefield. Calmness does not arise from the absence of thought, but from the ability to not be swept away by thought. It is the stillness that watches the ripples without trying to stop the water. Positivity in Buddhism is not about forced optimism. It is not about denying the suffering of the world or pretending that everything is fine. It is about turning toward each moment with courage and love. It is about seeing clearly the suffering that exists, and choosing, despite it, to keep the heart open. It is choosing to smile not because life is always easy, but because you have discovered something unshakable inside. A joy that is not dependent on circumstance. A peace that has nothing to prove. There are practices that support this inner climate. Mindful breathing is one. Not as a trick to calm down, but as a way to return to what is real. When the mind is scattered, the breath is always here, waiting like an old friend. Inhale and feel the body. Exhale and release the tension. Stay with it. Again and again. Not to escape, but to be present. The breath is the first refuge. Then comes awareness of the body, noticing where you hold stress, where you clench, where you disconnect. You bring gentle attention there. You soften. You invite the body to join the calmness of the breath. And then you notice the mind. Its patterns. Its tendencies. Its movements. And without judgment, you simply watch. Noticing is enough. Seeing is enough. Gratitude is another doorway. Even in pain, there is always something to be grateful for: the breath, the sunlight, the sound of a bird, the kindness of a stranger, the resilience of your own heart. Gratitude is not sentimentality. It is clarity. It sees the whole picture, not just what is missing, but what is present. And in that seeing, joy arises. A quiet, steady joy that can coexist with sorrow. A joy that says, even this moment is a gift. Even this breath is enough. To stay calm and positive is also to recognize the power of letting go. Much of our suffering comes from holding on to expectations, holding on to rules, holding on to control. But life cannot be controlled. It can only be met. And so we learn to let go, not of responsibility, but of resistance. We let go of the idea that things must go a certain way. We let go of needing to be understood. We let go of the illusion that we are alone. And in that letting go, we find freedom. Letting go is not a passive act. It is an act of deep trust. Trust in the Dharma. Trust in the unfolding. Trust in the inner wisdom that knows how to navigate each step, even when the path is hidden. Trust that you do not need to have all the answers to keep going. Trust that presence is enough. It helps to remember that even the Buddha had to sit in the fire of his own mind. Even the awakened ones faced Mara, the voice of doubt, fear, temptation, distraction. But they did not run. They did not fight. They simply stayed. They witnessed. And in that witnessing, Mara lost power. So too, in our lives, when anxiety arises, when restlessness surges, we do not need to solve it. We need to stay. To breathe. To meet the moment with clarity. This is how calm is born. This is how positivity blooms, not by removing the weeds, but by nourishing the soil of awareness. To protect your energy in this world is an essential form of compassion. Not all conversations need your presence. Not all information needs your attention. Not all emotions need your identification. You can be open and discerning. You can be loving and still say no. You can be generous without depleting yourself. Protecting your energy is how you stay available for what truly matters. It is also vital to stay close to what uplifts you. The sound of the bell. The rhythm of chanting. The sight of the morning light through the trees. The teachings of the masters. The presence of noble friends on the path. These are nourishment. Drink deeply from them. Let them remind you of what is possible. Let them anchor you in what is real. And then return to your life, not to escape it, but to live it with awareness. In each moment, you have a choice, to react from habit or to respond from wisdom. To contract in fear or to expand in presence. To follow the mind's old patterns or to pause and breathe. That pause is sacred. In that pause, the entire Dharma lives. In that pause, you remember, you are not your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are not your history. You are awareness itself, vast, clear, free. Calm is not the destination. It is the path. Positivity is not a mask. It is a natural expression of a heart no longer bound by illusion. And the journey toward this way of being begins now, with this breath, with this choice, with this intention to stay. Stay, not because everything is easy, but because everything is precious. Stay, not because you have answers, but because you are willing to meet the questions. Stay, not because you never fall, but because you always rise. This is the way of the Dharma. This is how you stay calm and positive in the face of all things. This is the quiet revolution of the awakened heart. Part 10. Buddhist teachings to heal emotional pain. Emotional pain is the unseen wound. It leaves no scar upon the flesh, but it shapes the way one walks through the world. It is the heaviness behind a smile, the silence in a crowded room, the weight that presses on the chest before sleep. Some pains are ancient, formed in the shadows of childhood, carried unknowingly into adulthood. Others are fresh, carved by recent loss, betrayal, or confusion. Yet all pain shares one thing in common: it longs to be seen, not solved. The Buddhist path does not promise a life without pain, but it offers a lantern to hold while walking through it. These are not abstract philosophies. They are practical, grounded, and born from centuries of people sitting with their suffering and transforming it into understanding, compassion, and release. To begin healing, the first step is to acknowledge what is present. Not with resistance. Not with aversion. Simply with presence. This is sorrow. This is grief. This is anger. This is confusion. Buddhist teachings do not divide emotions into good or bad. They only ask, is it skillful? Does it lead to freedom or deeper bondage? Even sadness, when held in mindfulness, becomes a teacher. Even anger, when seen clearly, becomes a signal rather than a story. The practice is not to force joy, but to learn to sit with the pain without collapsing into it or turning away. The Buddha taught that all suffering arises from craving, from wanting things to be other than they are. Craving for pleasure, craving for permanence, craving for identity. Emotional pain often comes when reality collides with expectation. Someone did not love us the way we hoped. Life did not unfold according to our plans. We were not treated with the kindness we believed we deserved. The pain is real, but beneath it, there is often a clinging to a version of the world that does not exist. And so the work of healing begins not just by feeling the pain, but by releasing the grip on what was never in our control. Not with coldness, but with clarity. When we sit in meditation, the memories rise. The voices return. The mind replays the moments that broke us. And the heart, unprotected, may begin to ache. But this is not a sign of regression. It is a sign that healing is occurring. The wounds are surfacing not to punish you, but to be seen in the light of awareness. Buddhist practice invites us to become the compassionate witness of our own suffering. We learn to hold ourselves the way a mother holds her crying child, not trying to fix the pain immediately, but simply being with it. This presence is powerful. It is transformative. When pain is witnessed with non-judging awareness, it begins to soften. It begins to speak. It begins to dissolve. One of the greatest gifts of the Dharma is the insight into impermanence. No emotion lasts forever. No matter how deep the ache, how sharp the sorrow, how overwhelming the fear, it will change. Like the seasons. Like the breath. Like the tide. This truth does not erase the pain, but it prevents us from drowning in it. It offers a rope to hold on to in the storm. This, too, shall pass. This grief will shift. This sadness will move. And something new will arise in its place, not because you forced it, but because you allowed it. The teachings also point to the importance of self-compassion. Often, we are hardest on ourselves. We judge our pain. We tell ourselves we should be over it by now. That we should be stronger. That others have suffered more. But pain is not a competition. And healing is not linear. To offer compassion to others while withholding it from yourself is like tending to every garden but your own. Begin again. Speak gently to yourself. Rest. Breathe. Treat your inner suffering not as an enemy, but as a visitor who needs kindness. In the heart of Buddhist practice is metta, loving kindness. This is not just a feeling, but a training of the heart. We sit, and we offer phrases of love. May I be safe. May I be peaceful. May I be free from suffering. Even when we don't believe the words. Even when the heart is closed. We offer them anyway. Slowly, they begin to seep in. Like water softening stone. Like sunlight warming the earth. This practice rewires the mind. It creates new pathways of self-acceptance, of inner peace. And from this foundation, we begin to extend the same compassion to others. To live without fear is to no longer fear emotional pain. Not because it will never come again, but because we have built a relationship with it. We know how to meet it. How to breathe through it. How to hold it until it transforms. This is what it means to transform your mind, not to eliminate pain, but to no longer be ruled by it. Not to become invulnerable, but to become unshakable in awareness. Protecting your energy while healing means saying no to that which deepens your suffering. It means not returning to people, thoughts, or environments that reopen old wounds before you're ready. It means recognizing that peace is not selfish. It is medicine. You do not owe the world your brokenness. You owe yourself the time and space to mend. There will be days when the pain returns unexpectedly. A scent, a song, a memory. And in those moments, do not retreat into despair. Instead, return to the breath. Return to the body. Return to this moment. You are not who you were then. You are not frozen in that moment. You are here, now, awake, aware. And this presence is healing in itself. The teachings do not promise that pain will never revisit you, but they promise that you do not have to suffer unnecessarily. You do not have to carry pain that is not yours. You do not have to believe every thought that arises in the fog of despair. You are allowed to grieve and still be whole. You are allowed to rest and still be strong. You are allowed to feel deeply and still be free. As the layers peel back, you will begin to feel the return of softness. Not a naive softness, but a strong one. The kind that allows joy to visit again. The kind that allows laughter to arise without guilt. The kind that allows love to enter, not because the past is forgotten, but because the heart has room for both sorrow and light. This is the fruit of practice. Not the erasure of pain, but the expansion of the heart to hold it all. In the silence after tears. In the pause between breaths. In the stillness after the storm, there is peace. Not a peace given by the world, but a peace that arises from understanding, from acceptance, from letting go. This peace is yours. It always was. And in the quiet knowing of that, healing begins. And continues. And never ends. Because healing is not a destination, it is a way of being. A way of walking with love through every crack in the soul. A way of remembering, you are whole, even in your healing. You are home, even in your longing. You are enough, even in your pain. This is the Dharma. This is the path. This is the truth. Part 11, Buddhist Wisdom in Everyday Life. There is a kind of wisdom not found in books or sutras, not spoken from high seats or recited in chants, but quietly revealed in the spaces between breaths, in the hush of morning light, in the ordinary, sacred texture of daily life. Buddhist wisdom in its truest form is not something apart from the world, it is the clear seeing within it. It is not reserved for monastics in robes or mystics in caves. It belongs equally to the mother folding clothes in silence, to the elder watching the rain fall, to the worker breathing mindfully in a crowd of noise. Wisdom in the Buddhist path is not defined by how much one knows, but by how deeply one sees. And to see deeply is to live fully awake in the most mundane moments, where nothing is dismissed as meaningless and everything becomes a gate to understanding. In the act of washing a cup, sweeping a floor, walking through a busy market, Buddhist wisdom whispers, "Are you here, or are you elsewhere? Are you living this moment, or are you replaying yesterday's regret or rehearsing tomorrow's anxiety?" To be mindful in action is not just to slow down, it is to be completely present, without division, without rushing through life as though it were an obstacle course. To walk with awareness, to eat with gratitude, to listen with your whole being, these are not small things. They are how the path unfolds in daily steps. The Buddha taught that the Dharma is ehipassiko, come and see for yourself. This was not a call to blind belief, but an invitation to test truth in the fire of your own life. And so, the wisdom is found not just on the cushion, but in how you respond when someone speaks harshly, when things don't go your way, when fear arises, when joy enters unexpectedly. In those moments, do you contract, do you grasp, do you resist? Or do you pause, observe, soften? The measure of one's understanding is not the number of teachings memorized, but the quality of presence in difficulty. In everyday life, suffering often arises in subtle ways. A glance that triggers insecurity. A comment that stings. A plan that falls apart. The wisdom of the Buddha says, look here. Not to avoid the pain, but to understand it. Where is the clinging? Where is the expectation? What story is the mind spinning? And can you, just for a moment, let go of the story and return to what is actually happening. This is how suffering unravels. Not all at once, but strand by strand, as the practitioner becomes more intimate with their own mind. There is profound beauty in seeing things as they are. The taste of tea, the sound of footsteps, the weight of your own hands resting in stillness, each is a doorway to reality. When the mind is calm, it does not need to seek extraordinary experiences. The ordinary becomes radiant. The sky becomes a teaching. The breath becomes a miracle. This is not a denial of suffering. It is the balance of joy that arises when one stops waiting for something else to begin. To apply Buddhist wisdom in daily life is also to cultivate right speech, not just to avoid lies or harsh words, but to speak with awareness, to listen deeply, to use language that heals instead of divides. Every word carries energy. Every silence carries intention. Before you speak, ask, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? This practice alone can transform relationships, soften conflict, and invite deeper understanding. In the rush of modern life, people are often disconnected from themselves. The body moves through tasks, but the mind is scattered. Attention is fragmented. Inner peace feels distant. But it is not absence of time that causes this disconnection, it is the absence of presence. Buddhist practice invites us to return to the body, to the breath, to the now. No matter how fast the world moves, your breath remains a sanctuary. The simple act of pausing, between meetings, before replying, while waiting in line, becomes sacred. These pauses are not empty. They are full of life. Compassion, too, is a form of wisdom. Not the pity that keeps others at a distance, but the deep knowing that we all suffer, and that kindness is not weakness but strength. To live with compassion in everyday life means to see beyond appearances. The angry person may be hurting. The rude person may be scared. The silent one may be overwhelmed. When you see suffering beneath behavior, you no longer react, you respond. And your response becomes the teaching. It ripples outward in unseen ways. Patience is another jewel of the path. The willingness to stay with what is, even when it is uncomfortable. The ability to endure without hardening. Whether it is the long line, the illness, the slow unfolding of a dream, patience allows you to remain rooted. Without it, even joy becomes thin. With it, even difficulty becomes workable. In everyday life, patience is not passivity. It is the active choice to remain open, to stay present, to trust the process without needing immediate results. Equanimity, the calm balance of the mind, is the fruit of practice. It allows you to meet success and failure with the same steadiness. Praise and blame. Gain and loss. Pleasure and pain. These are the 8 worldly winds, and they blow through everyone's life. But the wise one, grounded in mindfulness and insight, does not get tossed. They feel the winds, but they do not let them determine their course. This is not detachment, it is freedom. To live this way is not to separate from the world, but to engage it more fully. To bring awareness into the market, the home, the hospital room, the traffic jam. The Dharma is not fragile. It belongs to every place where humans suffer, hope, and love. It belongs to the busy parent, the tired nurse, the lonely student, the aging man. There is nowhere it does not reach. And in each small act, offering a smile, picking up trash, choosing silence over gossip, responding to frustration with gentleness, you live the teachings. You don't need to announce your practice. Let your presence speak it. Let your steadiness reveal it. Let your kindness embody it. And others will feel it, even if they don't know why. The path is walked not just for oneself, but for all beings. When you water the seed of mindfulness in your own life, it nourishes the lives of those around you. This is Buddhist wisdom in everyday life, not a separate thing, not a distant philosophy, but the living breath of presence, the simple courage to show up with clarity, and the willingness to love in every moment. The world may be noisy, but your practice is quiet. The world may be chaotic, but your heart is spacious. And in this space, wisdom grows. Not as something to achieve, but as something to return to. Over and over again. In every step. In every breath. In every now. Part 12. Live gently, live awake. In the ever-turning wheel of life, where each moment rises and falls like the breath of the earth, there exists a rare and precious path, one not paved by ambition or sharpened by competition, but softened by mindfulness, lit by clarity, and walked in silence. This is the path of gentle living. Not weak, not fragile, but firm in its kindness, steady in its awareness, rooted in the ancient rhythm of things as they are. To live gently is to live awake. And to live awake is to meet all of life, not just the beautiful parts, but also the broken, with eyes wide open, heart undefended, and steps that leave no harm behind. Buddhist teachings do not speak of gentleness as mere softness. They speak of it as wisdom in motion. The one who has calmed the storms within no longer contributes to the storms without. The one who has learned to sit with discomfort no longer flinches at the discomfort of others. And the one who has seen the illusion of separateness no longer lives in a world of enemies. To live gently is not to withdraw from life, but to enter it more fully, with the courage to be present, the patience to understand, and the humility to not need to win. The roots of gentle living lie in mindfulness. The simple, radical act of paying attention. Not as a technique, but as a way of being. You drink your tea and you are just drinking your tea. You walk and you are just walking. You listen and you are really listening, not waiting to speak, not judging, not fixing. In these ordinary moments, when you're truly here, something sacred opens. The boundaries between self and other dissolve. The distance between mind and body disappears. And you begin to taste what the Buddha meant when he said, "Peace is found in the present moment." The present moment is the only place where life exists. In this place, there is no rush. There is no need to prove. There is only the unfolding. The rhythm of the breath. The rising of thought. The falling away of clinging. Each moment arises fresh. And in that freshness, you see, gentleness is not an act, it is the natural fragrance of awareness. When you stop grasping, you stop harming. When you stop defending, you start connecting. When you stop controlling, you start receiving. And in receiving life as it is, you find the kind of peace that cannot be shaken. To live gently is also to speak gently. The Buddha called this right speech, not just truth, but timely, kind, and beneficial. In a world saturated with noise, the gentle voice becomes a refuge. Not because it is soft, but because it is thoughtful. Each word becomes a gift, offered with care, offered with intention. And in those moments when words are not needed, silence becomes a deeper offering still. Gentleness is not only in speech and action, it is in thought. How you speak to yourself when no one is watching. How you hold your own pain. How you regard your own mistakes. The untrained mind attacks itself constantly, not enough, too late, always failing. But Buddhist wisdom invites a different approach. You are not your thoughts. You are not your past. You are awareness itself, vast, spacious, compassionate. And the more you return to this truth, the more your inner voice shifts. It becomes less like a critic, more like a companion. Less like a judge, more like a witness. And in that shift, your entire life softens. Gentle living also honors rest. The modern world glorifies exhaustion. Productivity becomes a badge of honor. Busyness becomes identity. But in Buddhist understanding, to be always moving is to be always escaping. The one who cannot stop is the one who fears what silence may reveal. But stillness is not a luxury, it is medicine. When you rest, truly rest, you begin to hear again. The quiet voice of intuition. The buried grief. The long-forgotten joy. The sound of your own breath. These are not interruptions. They are reminders. Life does not need to be chased. It needs to be attended to. To live gently is also to live with boundaries, not to shut others out, but to protect what is sacred within. The heart that is always giving, always open, without wisdom, soon becomes dry. Gentleness is not being available to everyone at all times. It is discerning where your presence is needed, where your energy is honored, and where your silence is the better gift. Protecting your energy is not selfish. It is sacred. When you care for yourself with mindfulness, you teach the world how to care. There will be days when life feels heavy, when the body aches, when emotions flood, when the mind spirals. On these days, gentle living does not demand that you rise. It only invites you to stay. Stay with the breath. Stay with the body. Stay with the moment. If you cannot smile, then rest. If you cannot be positive, then be present. Even in sorrow, there is a kind of grace. Even in pain, there is something holy being revealed. The lotus does not bloom despite the mud, it blooms because of it. To live gently is also to walk lightly upon this earth. To consume with awareness. To offer gratitude. To see that each thing you use has a cost. Each meal is a life. Each garment is labor. Each possession is space taken. And when you see this, you begin to simplify. Not to deny yourself joy, but to remember that true joy does not come from accumulation, it comes from freedom. The less you need, the more spacious your life becomes. The more you give, the more deeply you feel connected. Simplicity is not lack, it is clarity. In relationships, gentle living means listening with the heart. It means letting others be without needing them to change. It means disagreeing without needing to conquer. It means loving without needing to possess. And when conflict arises, as it will, gentleness holds the space for understanding. It says, "Let me see what I do not yet understand. Let me soften where I have been hard." This does not make you weak. It makes you deeply strong. Because the hardest thing to do is to remain kind in the face of difficulty. And yet this is the very essence of the path. In times of global suffering, injustice, or fear, living gently may seem naive. But it is in these times that gentleness is most needed. The world does not need more sharpness. It needs more hearts that will not harden. More minds that will not rush to hate. More beings who choose to act from love, even when the world does not. Gentle living is not retreat. It is resistance. It is choosing to be the still point in a turning world. The eye in the storm. The flame that does not burn but warms. The practice is not to wait for peace to arrive, but to live as if peace were already here. in your tone, in your breath, in the way you greet the morning, in the way you sit with sorrow, in the way you meet each person, stranger or friend, with eyes that say, I see you. I do not need to fix you. I only need to be here with you. This is the essence of Buddhist wisdom in its living form, not spoken, not written, but embodied. The path is not far. It is under your feet. It is in your breath. It is in the softness of your gaze, the steadiness of your hand, the calm in your presence. You do not need to escape the world to live differently. You only need to return, again and again, to what is simple, to what is true, to what is kind. Live gently. Live awake. Let your life be your offering. Let your presence be your teaching. And wherever you go, may you leave behind footprints of compassion, trails of silence, and a quiet reminder that peace is possible, here, now, always. Part 13, The Art of Letting Go. Letting go is not a dramatic act. It is not a sweeping declaration or a sudden abandonment of all worldly attachments. It is quiet, often invisible to the world, and yet it carries the power to change the entire course of a life. Letting go, in the light of Buddhist teachings, is not rejection, but understanding. It is not denial, but acceptance so deep that resistance dissolves. It is the art of releasing what no longer serves, not with anger or bitterness, but with clarity, compassion, and peace. The Buddha spoke of clinging as the root of suffering. Clinging to pleasure, clinging to identity, clinging to views, clinging to the body, clinging to outcomes. The world is in constant motion, but the mind wants to freeze it, to hold it in place, to say, let this last, let that never happen, let me stay in control. But life does not follow our wishes. It follows its nature, rising, falling, beginning, ending. And when we try to hold it still, we suffer. The art of letting go begins when we truly see this. Letting go is not giving up. It is not passivity or indifference. It is the courage to meet reality as it is. When something we love is taken from us, the pain is natural. But when we resist the fact of its passing, we create a second layer of pain, a suffering born of refusal. To let go is to peel away that second layer. It is to grieve fully, and then, when the time is right, to release the grip and bow to the impermanence of all things. In practice, letting go shows up in subtle ways. You are meditating, and a thought arises, a memory, a regret, a worry. You notice it. You feel its pull. And instead of following it, you breathe. You return. That moment is a letting go. It may last a second, but in that second, you are free. That freedom is not found in the thought. It is found in the space between grasping. And with time, that space grows. We are often taught that strength means holding on, pushing through, fighting back. But Buddhist wisdom offers another kind of strength, the strength to surrender. The strength to admit, I do not control this. I do not need to control this. I can let it be. I can let it pass. I can let it go. This is not weakness. This is maturity. The deep knowing that peace does not come from getting what we want, but from aligning with what is. Letting go applies not just to things or people, but to ideas, rules, even versions of ourselves. We carry identities, the successful one, the wounded one, the kind one, the strong one. These identities can be comforting, but they can also be prisons. When we cling to who we think we are, we limit who we can become. To let go is to open the hand of the self and allow what is no longer alive to fall away. Sometimes, we must let go of dreams. Not because they were unworthy, but because life revealed a different path. The mind resists this. It grieves what could have been. But slowly, if we stay present, we begin to see, what remains is not nothing. What remains is space. And from that space, something new can grow. Letting go is not the end of the story. It is the clearing before the next chapter. We may also need to let go of pain. Not by denying it, but by no longer feeding it. Pain asks to be felt, not clung to. The wound does not heal because we keep reopening it with memory and judgment. It heals when we offer it our full presence, without story, without blame, and then allow it to rest. This is a slow process. It requires kindness. But it is possible. Letting go is also the way we make peace with others. The grudges we carry, the old conflicts, the words not said, these live in us like stones. We believe we need them to protect our dignity, our narrative. But they weigh us down. Forgiveness is not about condoning harm. It is about releasing ourselves from its grip. It is about saying, I no longer wish to carry this. I choose peace over pain. I choose freedom over resentment. To live without fear is to let go of the need for certainty. The future is unknown. The path is winding. We want guarantees, but life offers no such thing. What it offers is presence. Breath. This moment. And in this moment, if we can release the need to control, the need to know, the need to be right, we discover a stillness that cannot be disturbed. That stillness is not in the future. It is now. Always now. In daily life, letting go can mean setting boundaries. It can mean walking away from situations that drain your spirit. It can mean allowing others to be who they are, without needing to fix them. It can mean pausing before reacting, choosing silence instead of argument, choosing space instead of entanglement. These are small acts, but they are powerful. Each one creates a little more peace. Letting go also means trusting the Dharma. Trusting that the path will unfold. Trusting that your efforts matter, even if results are not immediate. Trusting that you are not alone, that others have walked this way, that the teachings are alive and always available. This trust is not blind. It is born from practice. From seeing again and again that when we release clinging, life does not fall apart, it opens. And sometimes, the most profound letting go is simply to let go of the thought that something is wrong. To sit in the middle of life exactly as it is, without the inner commentary, without the fight, and to say, this is what's here. Let me be with it. Let me breathe with it. Let me love it, even if it hurts. In that loving, something shifts. The mind softens. The heart expands. And we remember, letting go is not loss. It is liberation. The lotus blooms not by holding on to the mud, but by rising through it. And so do we. Each time we let go, of fear, of pride, of sorrow, of control, we rise a little closer to our true nature. Not separate. Not bound. Not afraid. But spacious. Free. At peace. Letting go is the practice of every breath. The inhale is life's gift. The exhale is your release. Trust both. Rest in both. Live in both. And begin again. Part 14, Be still and know the path. There is a voice that cannot be heard through noise, a knowing that will not reveal itself in the rush of thought, a truth that only emerges when everything else quiets. This truth does not come from books, nor from others, nor from the mind that demands answers. It comes from stillness. Deep, spacious, unwavering stillness. In the heart of Buddhist practice, to be still is not a retreat from the world, but the most profound way of entering it. Stillness is not the absence of movement, but the presence of awareness. It is the mirror in which all things are reflected, and nothing is grasped. It is the source from which clarity, compassion, and courage arise without effort. To be still and know the path is to realize that the path is not something ahead to be reached, but something already beneath your feet. Each step, each breath, each moment is the path. When we stop running after desires, away from fears, toward imagined futures, we begin to notice what has always been here. The body, breathing. The mind, aware. The present, open. But the mind, trained by habit, resists stillness. It equates it with passivity, with boredom, with irrelevance. And yet, it is in stillness that all true transformation begins. In stillness, the illusions of identity soften. Who are you without the roles, without the plans, without the endless narration? The Buddha taught that clinging to self is one of the deepest sources of suffering. We cling to our image, to our story, to our views, and in doing so, we live a life of resistance. Stillness invites a different way. It invites us to rest in being, not becoming. In presence, not performance. In seeing, not reacting. And from this rest, we begin to recognize the vast, unconditioned awareness that underlies all experience. That awareness is not born and does not die. It is your refuge, your home, your freedom. To be still is to listen, not with the ears, but with the whole being. In the silence between thoughts, the Dharma speaks. Not in words, but in insight. You begin to see clearly the impermanence of all things, the changing body, the shifting mind, the coming and going of pleasure and pain. You no longer cling to what is pleasant, nor fear what is unpleasant. You simply observe. And in that observation, a great calm arises. A calm that does not depend on external peace, but on inner balance. Stillness reveals the truth of suffering, not as a theory, but as a living presence. You sit, and discomfort arises. Restlessness. Doubt. Fear. Instead of escaping, you stay. You breathe. You feel. And in staying, you learn, suffering is not the enemy. It is the doorway. When held in awareness, suffering becomes insight. It shows you where the mind clings, where the heart closes, where the illusion persists. And when the cause is seen, the release becomes possible. This is the beginning of freedom. But stillness is not only for the cushion. It is for the world. The still mind moves through the world differently. It sees clearly. It speaks gently. It acts wisely. It does not react to every provocation. It does not grasp for validation. It walks slowly, listens deeply, and touches life with reverence. The practitioner who has tasted stillness becomes like water, able to flow, able to rest, able to reflect without distortion. Such a being is not withdrawn from life, but fully immersed in it, without being overwhelmed by it. In a world that values speed, stillness is a radical act. It is the refusal to be swept away by urgency. It is the willingness to not know, to not fix, to simply be. When you are still, you return to the natural rhythm of things. You see that the breath breathes itself, the heart beats on its own, the earth turns without your effort, You are not in charge of the universe. And that realization is not defeat, it is liberation. You begin to live with more trust, more surrender, more gratitude. You begin to flow with life instead of against it. There is also a healing that comes from stillness. The body, held in awareness, begins to release tension. The nervous system settles. The mind unclenches. Emotions, long buried, rise and pass like clouds. You learn that you do not need to be afraid of your inner world. You can sit with sorrow. You can hold anger. You can cradle grief. And none of it needs to define you. You are the awareness in which these waves arise and dissolve. The more you practice, the more you trust this space. The more you know, nothing that comes can harm the one who sees. To protect your energy is to protect your stillness. Do not give it away to every distraction, every opinion, every urgency. Create spaces in your day to return. A quiet breath before speaking. A pause before reacting. A moment of presence before sleep. These small returns are acts of compassion. They remind you that peace is not somewhere else. It is here, always, waiting beneath the surface of doing. You only need to remember. Stillness also deepens love, not the clinging love of possession, but the spacious love of understanding. When you are still, you see others more clearly. You see their pain, their fear, their longing. You stop needing them to be different. You stop using them to complete your story. You simply love, without agenda. And this love is the most powerful force there is. It does not grasp. It does not demand. It does not wound. It simply radiates. And in its presence, others begin to remember their own stillness. To live without fear is to rest in stillness. Fear arises when we leave the moment, when we imagine what might happen, when we replay what did happen, when we try to control what is happening. But in stillness, there is only now. And in now, there is breath. There is presence. There is nothing to fear. Stillness does not remove danger. It removes delusion. And in the clarity that follows, wisdom acts. Not from panic, but from peace. To find peace in chaos, one must carry stillness into the chaos. Not as an armor, but as a presence. You walk through noise and do not become noisy. You walk through confusion and do not become confused. You remain rooted in the awareness that sees all things come and go. And this seeing becomes your freedom. This is the art of being still. Not the stillness of stone, but the stillness of depth. Like the ocean that remains unmoved beneath the waves. Like the sky that remains untouched by the clouds. You live in the world, but you are no longer of it. You feel, but you are not consumed. You act, but you are not driven. You rest, and in that rest, you return. Return again and again. To the breath. To the body. To the now. This is the temple. This is the path. This is the teaching. Let others chase what they will. You simply be. Simply breathe. Simply know. And in that knowing, you will remember, the path is not found in the future. It is found in stillness. And in that stillness, you are already home. Part 15, The Quiet Freedom of Non-Resistance. There is a subtle shift that occurs not with thunder, not with fireworks, but with a silent turning inward, a gentle loosening of the clenched heart, a quiet release of the need to fight life. This is the beginning of non-resistance. It is not passive. It is not resignation. It is the conscious choice to no longer stand in opposition to what is. And in that choice, a freedom is born that no external force can take away. In the Buddha's path, this freedom is not found by changing the world, but by changing how the heart meets it. Non-resistance is not indifference to injustice or pain. It is the profound clarity that arises when one stops struggling against the nature of reality. The world is what it is, impermanent, uncertain, complex. People are as they are, flawed, changing, wounded, beautiful. The mind wants to shape all of this into a version it can control, predict, understand. But Buddhist wisdom reveals this as the root of suffering, the refusal to allow life to be what it is. Non-resistance begins with this insight. It does not mean we do not act. It means we act from a place that is not burdened by reactivity. We speak, we care, we try, but we do not carry the false hope that life must conform to our preferences for us to be at peace. To practice non-resistance is to be fully present with discomfort. When pain arises, physical or emotional, the instinct is to flinch, to fix, to distract. But the practitioner sits, breathing, feeling, observing, not judging, not pushing away, not grasping, just allowing. And something begins to happen. The pain changes. Maybe it softens. Maybe it remains. But the suffering around the pain, the tightening, the fear, the aversion, diminishes. And what is left is just sensation. Just this. Just now. It is not what we imagine peace would feel like. But it is deeper. Resistance takes many forms. It is in the tension of your shoulders when someone speaks unkindly. It is in the story you repeat about what should have been. It is in the subtle way you avoid silence. It is in the urgency to be somewhere else, to be someone else, to make something happen. These resistances do not bring relief. They bring fatigue. The path of practice invites you to notice these moments, not to scold yourself, but to soften. What happens if you let it be? What happens if you start fighting? The lotus does not open by force. It opens because the conditions are right. You are the same. You do not need to push yourself into awakening. You need to stop pushing yourself away from what is. Non-resistance creates the conditions for clarity, for love, for transformation. Not by doing more, but by being deeply with what is already here. Non-resistance is not the same as approval. It does not mean you say yes to injustice or harm. It means you meet even the most difficult realities with awareness first, not denial, not outrage, not collapse. You see clearly. And from that clarity, action arises that is rooted in compassion, not in anger. This is not easy. It requires immense strength to stay with the moment before judgment, to breathe before reaction, to choose understanding over blame. But this is the path that frees not only you, but others. To live gently in this way is to become unshakable. Not because you do not feel, but because you feel everything without drowning. You become like the deep ocean that remains still beneath the waves. The winds of life may stir the surface, but they do not touch the depth. This is not a fantasy. This is what becomes possible when you stop resisting the nature of things. Even joy can be resisted. When we fear it will end. When we feel unworthy of it. When we try to grasp it. But joy, too, is a passing visitor. To experience it fully, we must let it come and go. Like the breath. Like the seasons. This is the quiet art of allowing. The art of living with an open hand. In everyday life, non-resistance might look like listening instead of interrupting, resting instead of forcing productivity, saying no without guilt, allowing silence without filling it, meeting anger with presence rather than defensiveness. These are not dramatic acts, but they are revolutionary. They shift the inner climate from turbulence to calm. There may be grief to meet. The grief of letting go of how you thought things should be. The grief of realizing that peace does not come from control. But beneath that grief is relief. The relief of not having to hold it all together. The relief of no longer needing life to be other than it is in this moment. The relief of finally resting. And from that rest, something else arises. A deep compassion for others who are also struggling. You see how much resistance lives in every heart. You see how much fear drives the harshness of the world. And you begin to respond not with resentment, but with tenderness. Not because you are better, but because you have touched something deeper. You no longer need to win every argument. You no longer need to explain yourself endlessly. You no longer need to defend your story. You simply live. You simply breathe. And that breath becomes your anchor. That breath becomes your offering. Non-resistance allows you to live without fear because you are no longer at war with life. Whatever comes, you meet it. Whatever goes, you let it. You remain. Not untouched, but unbroken. Not detached, but fully here. To be still is to stop pushing. To let go is to stop clinging. To love is to stop protecting the heart. These are all acts of non-resistance. They are also the deepest forms of wisdom. The ones that do not shout, but change everything. When you are tired of struggling, sit. Feel the breath. Let everything be as it is. And see what remains when nothing is pushed away. That stillness. That awareness. That quiet freedom. That is the path. And if these teachings have offered even one breath of peace, one moment of clarity, one reminder that the battle is not necessary, let that be enough. You are already walking the path. You are already home. If your heart remembers something sacred in these words, something beyond thought, consider subscribing to Daily Dharma Listening. Let the voice of the teachings return again and again to accompany your days. May each word remind you not to fight the waves, but to float gently upon them, present, awake, and free.